Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Hello, Jamie here. If you've been enjoying the podcast and want to show your support, I have a brand new Patreon page, and signing up will grant you access to the Right and Wrong Discord server, where you can interact directly with many of the authors, agents, and editors who have been guests on the show. You can also interact with me and see what guests are coming up, so you could maybe suggest questions that I could ask them. Thanks again for listening, and I really do appreciate any and all support that you guys give me for the podcast. Let's get back to it.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything
Nailed it.
is the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I'm very excited to be joined by an up-and-coming literary star. It's literary fiction novelist Cecile Pin. Hi, Cecile.
Hi,
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Let's start off with the very exciting news. It hasn't happened yet as of recording this, but when this goes live, your debut novel, Wandering Souls, will be out in the world. Tell us a bit about it.
Yes, thank you. So Wandering Souls, it's partly based on my family history, and it tells the story of three siblings, and Tan and Min, who leave Vietnam after the Vietnam War and find themselves first at a refugee camp in Hong Kong, and then through a bit of a twist of fate in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s, so during the Margaret Thatcher days. And they've lost their parents and half of their siblings while on the journey to the UK. So they're finding themselves in this completely quite hostile land, having to build new lives for themselves from scratch while also dealing with their grief. And so the story is told through a bit of a fragmented narration. And you also have the voice of Dao, their deceased little brother, speaking to them from a place from beyond. And you also have more modern narrator who's kind of trying to piece together the story of Vietnamese boat people. So there you go.
No, that was great. It's and just reading through it, it's so vivid. Like, you have a wonderful way with descriptions. You bring out so much color and life to things that would at first glance seem sort of mundane.
Ooh, sorry, my cat just disturbed me. Sorry. Could
That's
you
okay.
repeat the question?
It actually wasn't a question. I was just flattering you. But
So much.
what I was saying is, so I mean, going on from that, you mentioned that you do move from different points of view. It's got a really cool structure, actually, because you hop between not just different narrators and points of view, but also like decades. It spans around 50 years, and you move kind of between decades, not necessarily chronologically or anything like that. At one point, I think there's even a chapter about written in the form of a news article about the Thatcher government and refugees. Was it all planned out that way? Did you always kind of have an idea of how it was going to come out?
Not really, to be honest. I think I wanted to find a way to include in the book some kind of essayistic parts and some research bit. And I think also the way I learned my story from my mom and my family was through fragmented narration. It wasn't something that was given to me, in a linear structure. So I think I also wanted to reflect that in the book, that a lot of second generation immigrants learn about their history bits by by learning stuff from their parents or uncles throughout the years, and also by making their own research. So I think I wanted the book to reflect that in some way. And I was also very inspired by books who have a fragmented narration. So like The Right Parts by Maggie Nelson, which I quote in the epigraph, and Human Act by Hong Kong, things like that. So I was really interested in writing the book. in that way.
Okay. Right. And it sort of evolved as you kind of constructed it and the order kind of came together.
Exactly. So I didn't really write the book chronologically. So I think I wrote, for example, the last chapter quite early on in the process,
Ah,
and and then it just quite happened naturally. If I was doing research as I was writing the book, so if I felt like I really wanted to include something in there, I would just kind of add a chapter with it, and then also through edits. I think at first there were less narrative parts, so there were less parts with Anne and Tan and Min, the protagonists.
yeah.
But through edits as well, I added more stuff, more about their stories in the book as well, just to because that was a feedback that my editors would give me was like, we want to know more about these people.
That's good. That's good that you've created a character that people are reading it and thinking, "Well, tell me more, tell me more."
Yeah.
That's amazing. So in terms of the research you mentioned, obviously a lot of it is talking to your family and sort of them recollecting their experience. What other kinds of research did you do?
Yeah, so I actually didn't want to ask my family too many questions because well, they moved to, so the book is set in Hong Kong in the UK, but my family moved to Thailand and then France. So
Okay.
from the get-go, I knew that the experiences would be quite different. And
Mm.
I also really wanted to make it fiction in that way. I wanted the characters to not be based on my family, my uncles, and so on. So I asked a few questions, but it was mostly just reading testimonies online, looking through the National Archive because it was during COVID, so I couldn't go to the actual National Archive. So it was a lot of just me sitting on my computer at like 2 a.m. Looking at videos online, looking at photos, just so I can get the descriptions right. Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been working on this like particular novel?
So I think because it's partly based on family history, it was kind of always in my mind from an early age. I really started working on it during the pandemic. So I think
Hmm.
early in 2020, that's when I thought, okay, I really want to actually start working on this project. And then lockdown happened. I got furloughed for 6 weeks, which really kind of gave me the time to get started on a novel. And then I got onto London Writers Awards program in I think early 2021, and again that really gave me the structure and also more confidence to start working on the book properly because I would have writing groups, so I had to kind of give myself deadlines. I had to write a certain number of words every week or so.
Yes.
But yeah, so I would say from early 2020 was when I really started working on the book.
Had you written other things previously to this, or was this the first sort of proper long form novel that you'd attempted?
Yeah, it was the first thing. Actually, I liked creative writing when I was at school, but it's never something I took really seriously. Just because I didn't think that I could write a book, and English isn't my first language either, so
Yeah.
it felt like something out of reach to me. And I did philosophy at university. I did a master as well. So I guess I did more nonfiction writing, more like essay dissertations and so on. So at first I was more interested in that, but then I just think fiction is more fun, and so I just began to write Wandering Souls. And there we are.
And here we are. Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I mean, speaking of, um, you are bilingual and English being your second language.
Yes.
Um, have you ever written in French? Have you ever tried to write in French?
So I did it a bit when I was at school because I was at a French-speaking school.
Yeah.
I don't know why. For some reason, I just enjoy writing in English more. I think maybe it's because my relationship with the English language in a way is maybe one that's more defined, and I've studied the English language more, whereas
Yeah.
French is more the language of my childhood. But I haven't really written anything in French since being 18 or something like that. So
Yeah. Okay.
so quite a long time now. So I
Yeah.
think just the English, my relationship with the English language is more elaborate, I would say.
Okay. That's interesting. Do you ever read in French, or do you mostly read in English?
I do. I want to read more in French. I grew up reading, Molière and Zola and the classics. And then because I started working in publishing in the UK at Penguin Random House, I sort of felt like I needed to write only in English, just really immerse myself in English literature. So I've sort of put it aside for now, but I definitely, it's something that I want to do. I want to try and read like at least 1 or 2 French books a month now. That's on my like to-do list this year.
Yeah, that's cool. Because it's just like, it's interesting when you look at like translation, and it's never the same. In like a weird way, it's like you've translated it, but the feel is always a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have so much respect for translators because it's such an it's more than just translating word for word. You have to really find a way to translate in the vibe and the feeling of the book in a different language.
Yeah,
I think it's such a hard thing to do.
Yeah, because you need to understand the sort of colloquialisms of both cultures in a way, both languages. It's very, very tricky.
Mm-hmm, yeah, my book is getting translated into French, and I was asked like, "Would you be interested to translate the book?" And I was just like, "No, I'm not interested. I'm sorry." But I think I should be getting the translation in the next month or so. So I'm really excited to read that.
That'll be so fascinating for you to kind of look at it and be like, it's not what I meant. But that'll be, how exciting. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you work in publishing in the UK. Are you in editorial?
Yeah, so actually I was an editorial assistant, but I've left my job at the end of last year just to kind of focus on writing full time for the time being. But I was an editorial assistant at Jonathan Cape at Penguin Random House.
I imagine that's the kind of job where you learn so much about the craft and writing and also the industry and how everything works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It was, I really loved it in some ways. And I love the writers I got to work with, and I learned so much about editing and just the craft of writing a story and so on. I think for me, it just got to that stage where it was just too much work. So because I think it's just an industry-wide problem where, you just have so much manuscripts to read. So I was finding myself, having to read on weekends and evenings. And it was just, I was like, oh my God, I have to work on book 2 at some point. I just won't have the time. But yeah, I learned a lot. And also I think what gave me confidence to start working on Wandering Souls is that I realized as well that there just was a bit of a gap in the market. There weren't a lot of Southeast Asian stories based in the UK. So I think having that kind of insider knowledge as well, being like, oh, I think like if I write this story, maybe like there will be some interest and just kind of, I think that helped me being a bit more objective about my own writing, which was helpful. And then, just knowing the whole process, the whole publication process from like cover design and, proof mailings and so on. It was fun to be on the other side of it.
It was fun for a bit, and now you're done.
Yeah.
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Having been on that side of things and in the editorial, how did you find going through with Fourth Estate, your publisher, and kind of going through the editorial process from the writer's side?
I think I was lucky because Fourth Estate were really amazing. And I'm not just saying that to be nice. I think they were generally really good, and I really liked that that Kish, my UK editor, and Ruby, she's long left, but she was my US editor. They really worked collaboratively on the edit, so they would consult one another and then gave me their edit together on one document. So it was really such a privilege to have kind of 2 really great editors give me their feedback. So I really enjoyed the editing process. I think we did like a few rounds, and I was because I was just an editorial assistant. I hadn't really. It's not something that I was really privy to look at those edits when I was at Cape. So it was also just really great to learn more about the actual like editing process and how it worked, and I was very open to their feedback as well, because I knew from working in publishing how valuable it is, because sometimes you have authors who are maybe not a bit anxious about taking on edits, and maybe not super willing to take in as many edits. So I think maybe working in publishing made me even more open to it.
Yes, yeah, because you kind of get how the system works, and you know that everyone working on that, everyone giving feedback is working their hardest to make the book as good as it could possibly be. Everyone's trying to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And again, I think the fact that I had two editors agreeing on the same edit made me realize, like, okay, so that must really be true, that I need to change that. So yeah, I really enjoyed the editing process, and it's so satisfying now to see the book just being so much better for it.
Yeah. Was there ever a time when your two editors disagreed and you had to be the tiebreaker?
I'm sure they disagreed on some stuff, but I think they kind of settled on that before getting the edit.
Okay. Very professional of them.
Yeah, but I don't think there was anything massive that we all like disagreed on. So it was a pretty smooth sailing process. There was one bit where I referred to Jack Skellington in the book, who's like a Disney character from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And I think my UK editor at one point was like, maybe we should remove this because I don't think people would get it. And I removed it. And then like 2 weeks later, I was like, no, I want to add it back. So I re-added it.
You put your foot down. This is the one thing that we have to have in the book, Jack Skellington.
Exactly. But besides that, like little things like that, I think we were all in agreement, really, which was great.
Amazing. And so when the book went on submission, when you and your agent Matt Turner over at RCW put it out, am I right in thinking it got snapped up super quickly?
Yeah, it was great. I was not expecting that. So Kish preempted it in 24 hours, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was great because I remember Matt telling me, like, oh, you find something to distract you because it's going to be stressful for you. You know, like it can take a long time. But it happened quite quickly, so I was really grateful.
Quite quickly,
yeah. And also, it's like Fourth Estate was would have been my number one choice. So just getting that offer,
amazing,
was it felt pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine because you hear about so many books taking like 6 months before they get a bite or anything, or just dying on submission. So I imagine you'd kind of sat back and be like, okay, I'll try not to think about it, and then you get the call like the next day.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of preparing myself for a long wait, and then a day later, Matt was like, "Oh yeah, we have a program." So that was really great.
Oh my god, amazing! Speaking of Matt, at what point were you already in publishing when you signed with Matt? How did you find the process of submitting and getting an agent?
Yes, so I was in publishing and I got on the London Writers Awards program, which I think kind of put me on the radar of some agents. And so I think a lot of them had my work email, and I was in touch with some of them already because of Jonathan stuff. But so I got a few emails from agents saying like, oh, like, you know, when you're ready to submit, like, I'd love to take a look at your writing and so on. And then, so when I was finally ready, and I took my time, you know, to really feel like I had a good draft until I submitted. And then I submitted, I think, in June 2021, I want to say. Can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021. Anyway, I submitted in the summer. It was 2020. Yeah. No. Sorry.
Okay.
It's all getting merged.
If I had to guess, I would say probably earlier because publishing takes a very long time.
Yeah, so it must have been 20. It's so stupid. I'm so sorry. I was like, when did I submit?
I get 100%. Those lockdown years are just like all one in my head. It's just, it all blurs.
Let me try and see on the bookseller. When the article got released.
This is how you find out when things happened in your life. You go on the bookseller. What did I do on this day?
Yeah, so I submitted in 2021 actually. So June 2020. So I think I signed with Matt in June 2021, and then during the summer we worked on the edits together.
Did you do a lot with Matt beforehand?
I think we did maybe one round or two when we just again it was really about adding more of the narrative parts, and we're removing a few typos and proofreading and so on. So I added a few chapters and more dialogue as well, because I think my book, I don't really enjoy writing dialogues, especially at the beginning.
Okay.
So I think I just added some dialogue and so on. But again, it was quite a good process. And before I'd signed with Matt, because I had I got quite a few rejections from agents. I think a few agents. The feedback that I got was that the story was good, but it just needed too much work or something. And so that was the feedback I got. But I got an offer from Matt and a few other offers. But I went with Matt because our visions for the book aligned quite well. So I knew that we would have a good sort of editorial relationship, which we did. So yeah, we worked on edits during the summer, and then he submitted the book, I think in September of that year, and that's when it happened.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, and then the next day, you were signed. Amazing! What a dream come true.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I feel very lucky.
So you mentioned you're now focusing everything on writing. Was it a 2-book deal with Fourth Estate?
No, so it's a 2-book deal in the US, but not in the UK.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Does that change how you're going to approach writing the next novel, or just kind of do it as you would do it anyway?
I think I'm just going to do it as I would do it anyways, and then we'll see what happens, because I have because my editor for the first book left in the US. She's no longer in publishing, so I'm going to have a new editor in the US as well. So I think there's going to be some changes anyways for book 2. So I'm just going to try and write a good book and then see what happens.
That's all you can do, right? Is it going to be a similar style to Wandering Souls, that sort of fragmented narrative?
I think so. I think it might be fragmented in some way. I think it's going to be quite contemporary, and I'm still in the very early stages, so I can't tell you too much, to be honest. But I think it'll be more contemporary than Wandering Souls, and because I think Wandering Souls was quite draining for me to write by the end of it, because it's so personal and it required so much research, and I really felt the responsibility to make it accurate and so on. So I think for the new book, I think I want to do something maybe that feels a bit more fun for me to write, and more contemporary. So I'm excited about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, sounds cool. A little bit the same, but also a little bit different. It'll be exciting.
Yes, exactly.
Before we move on to the final question, I do often like to ask people little bits about what they've learned, and then how they kind of can share that with the rest of the writing community. So if you were to imagine that you could go back in time and give your younger self, a piece of advice, what piece of advice would it be about sort of writing and publishing?
Sure. I think I was so stressed out when I was younger. I had a lot of anxiety, and I had zero self-confidence, and I had to deal with rejection for a year before getting any jobs in publishing, because I would just apply for jobs and I would just get rejected all the time. So, and that was a year before getting Wandering Souls published and getting a book deal. So I think I would just tell myself to just relax and trust the process, and to, have a bit more confidence in myself, because everything worked out for me, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you worked very hard to make it work out for you, but it has worked out, and the book is brilliant.
And thank you.
I hope that the launch is very exciting and very successful.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us on to the final question, which, as always, is, Cecile, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, and it can't be your own. I guess it could be your own, but that would be
That would be weird.
that would be intense. Yeah. Which book would you take with you?
I would probably have to go for a classic, maybe the Iliad or something
Oh,
like
nice.
that, or 100 Years of Solitude. Just one, I just feel like those books have so many layers and characters, and you can kind of study them for years and never get bored. So I would probably go with the Iliad, just because I'm really into Greek myth at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I would go for that one.
That's a great choice.
Again in 1 year, and I'm sure I would have a different answer.
Oh, yeah. For me, it's like ask me in a week and I'll have a different answer. So amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cecile, for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your experience and your journey and telling us about Wandering Souls. It's such a cool book, and I'm really excited for everyone to get their hands on it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with everything that Cecile is doing, you can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at CecileKVPin. You can also head over to her website, cecilepin.com. And to make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. We also have a Patreon for exclusive access and content. And for more bookish chats, check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Cecile. It's been so great chatting with you. And thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.